A lot changed overnight in a great way, in many significant ways, as we were all sleeping, waking up, getting ready for Monday, new work week, Columbus Day. We'll talk about that as well and here in just a second. It happened. Peace deal, at least the most important part of it, has held. Hostages freed. And so many different things look so irrelevant right now. I mean, my main takeaway, I can't stop thinking about this since I got up this morning to do the live stream. You're looking at the coverage that we'll get into of, the hostages being freed and Trump in Israel and speaking to Israeli parliament. And how ridiculous and insignificant and rotten and petty does all the other stuff, all the politics, all the gotcha politics look today when you get to the stuff that's really important like this? For it's not just their issue, it's our issue. It's a world issue. It's world peace. A first step in the right direction, as he said in his speech. Now you look back and you look at the media outlets that have done nothing but try to attack this guy, but they're there now, like CNN covering it, because it's such a massive worldwide news story. How ridiculous do they look now? How ridiculous does this shutdown look now? The Schumer shutdown, as we'll get into here in a second, because now it's being labeled as that. It puts everything into perspective, but we'll get into it. And of course, Columbus Day today, or as President Trump said just the other day.
In other words, we're calling it Columbus Day. Okay.
Yes.
That's another thing that's changed, but let's get into it. First of all, thanks for finding the live stream and the podcast. Wicked Radio lives on as a replay as well on YouTube and Facebook and right here on X, and the audio podcast as well. Just make sure you download and subscribe is there, no matter what platform you like to go on. Let's get right to it. Breaking news overnight. Yeah, I don't think it's hyperbole to call it this. It's history.
Breaking news out of the Middle East, where hopes and prayers are finally being answered. We just got word Hamas has begun releasing the remaining 48 Israeli hostages more than 2 years after they were taken. Of those, about 20 are still believed to be alive. You're looking at live pictures of Hostage Square there on the right. That's in Tel Aviv, where you can see thousands.
That's another wild thing. They actually called it Hostage Square. It's how important. Can you imagine? Being right next door to that? That's how important this was to these folks. But it happened for sure. You might have seen the overhead shot of, and I put a still shot of it on my X account, the overhead shot of the welcome in Tel Aviv as Air Force One was flying over. Thank you, President Trump, with like his image right there on the beach. Right, powerful, powerful thing. That happens. First good step, and then, I mean, really, he's been on a roll with his public speeches and his official state speeches recently. If you caught any of this from President Trump speaking to Israeli parliament, I gotta say, this was one of his best. Here's the cherry-picked version of it that I picked out just a couple of minutes ago, which kind of sets the scene for the entire thing. And it was great, too, because he showed up and they were introducing him, and they caught him on a hot mic going, nice place, nice place. So here he was.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
In one way or another, and who knows, and we can debate that for another day, but can't we just take today and just celebrate something, peace in the region, and hope that this long-lasting peace deal goes well into the future? I don't know what's going to happen with Gaza. Who the hell knows? Is it going to be a land grab? Is it going to be, are we going to have Trump Tower Gaza there pretty soon? I don't know. But leave that to another day where everybody can attack him on that. But for where we are right now, again, I can't get this out of my head. A lot changed. All the rotten pettiness, all the other stuff, think back now and do, a movie screen on one side and a different movie on the other. The first one, look at what's happening right now. We're getting that, and he did do this. I mean, that's factual. This doesn't happen despite them trying to claim that, it was Biden's plan as well. This is what he was going to do. Sure, right. Does anybody believe that? It's factual that he got this done. I don't personally think they would have been taken, and this would have happened 2 years ago if he was in office at the time. But now here we are, and compare that to everything in our country they tried to get him on. Everything, all of it. The Russia collusion hoax, all of the other hoaxes, all of the lawfare, everything that came after him. The Trump Tower thing, the petty crimes. How ridiculous does all of that look now in comparison to what's happening right now? But here they are, because it's such a massive, massive worldwide story. All of those same media networks that fostered all of this, the gotcha Trump era, all of them right there now covering it. What are they going to say? How ridiculous do they look now? Here's a little snippet of that. Here's CNN on the ground.
And of course, endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause for President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in that crowd over at Hostage Square.
And they don't know how to handle that. That just breaks their brains. They can't understand that at all. It's like, well, how can they? And you know what they're doing now, because you know how it works in the CNN newsroom, and it's the same thing for all the other networks. They're spinning, trying to figure out how to tap the brakes on this, and how to say how this can be a bad thing, and how this doesn't work for the rest of the world, and what is it? They tried over the weekend. I just mentioned it a minute ago. And they came out and they said, well, this was the actual Biden plan all along. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? That, by the way, was so ridiculous and got no traction. It lasted about 6 hours, and everyone just shot it down because nobody believes it anymore. There's just something different with this too, and you can feel it. I can't put a number to you. You know, there's nothing to really. There's no concrete evidence of this. Some of these things that happen, and some of the things that are going on in current events, it really is. It's a feeling. And there's just a feeling now where all of the stuff they accused Trump of before just looks so ridiculous. And even the most ridiculous of the Trump deranged people, actual TDS victims in your life, maybe they won't say it to you today when you run into them later on, or when you get back into work, whatever it is, or your family members later on, or throughout the holidays. Maybe they won't say it out loud. Deep down, even the most Trump deranged people cannot deny that he got this done. I mean, that's different. That's a different era. It's a different way of looking at things, and it's not going to bring them out of this. It's not going to bring them out of their absolute pure hatred of what they believe. And those are all the people that stick right by watching The View, and they stick right by MSNBC and CNN. They believe hook, line, and sinker everything they tell them. But something's not jiving with those folks. When they see this happening, they see him there, and then what they've been told. Is it going to fix them and cure them? No, but they'll admit deep down inside, not out loud, but they know for sure that he actually got this done. And they don't know exactly how to process that. But that's not your worry. That's for them to deal with. You know, but this is historic. And you hope the actual long-lasting peace deal isn't broken. Hostages being released is great. That's fantastic. But you hope it actually is peace. And it is hope for a new era in that world. They've been fighting for 3,000 years. I mean, can you expect this thing to go completely smooth from here to eternity? Probably not. But this is one hell of a big first step. No doubt about it. But it's funny because on Air Force One, they got a bunch of good questions. And I got to tell you, one of the best reporters, that's just a Fox thing. I mean, I criticize Fox probably more than even the other networks. But one of the best reporters that actually gets Trump to answer some of the questions that he has for him most honestly is Peter Doocy. Young Peter Doocy at Fox News. He does a fantastic job. You have to give him credit. And I don't know, maybe because he knows him, there's something about the questions he asks Trump, some of them personal, that gets great reactions out of Trump. And for somebody like me to get reactions like that from President Trump, even going back to radio days, or you get these honest reactions, something to feed off of, it's just fantastic. Peter Doocy is on Air Force One as they're heading towards Israel, and he's asking him about what this means to him personally. What does it mean? Whatever, you know. And he asked them a question that Trump has posed before about Trump getting into heaven. Does President Trump get into heaven after this deal? And his response, and I don't think any other reporter, honestly, would have gotten this kind of a response. This is what he said.
You know, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven, but I've made life a lot better for a lot of people. And you know, as an example, had the election of 2020 not been rigged, you would have millions of people living just in Russia, Ukraine alone.
Personally, like I just said a couple of minutes ago, I think that's true, but that's a pretty honest answer if he's being, you know, completely transparent about it. Does Trump get into heaven? He doesn't seem to think so. But it reminds us of the point of why it's so important. I never thought Are you going to call President Trump the nicest guy in the world? Absolutely not. Whoever said, and when did we ever decide that that's what we want as president, especially in this era after what we had just lived through? I didn't want a nice guy. And you got to look at it as, where your vote went. You got to look at it as if you voted for President Trump, you voted for this guy. You hired him, right? And I didn't hire him to be a nice guy. I hired him to do things like this. Look at the mess with Hamas and put pressure on not only them, but let's not forget about this. And if the history books don't reflect this accurately, at least you'll remember that it went down this way. He also, don't let him twist it, he also put massive pressure on Israel to get this peace deal done. That's a fact. That is probably put more pressure on Israel than any other president in recent history. That is fact to get this done, and it was a key element in getting this done. So, I don't know. None of us know. That's the great mystery of life. What does it take to get into heaven in the afterlife? I don't know. But I would tend to bet that negotiating a peace deal and getting hostages home, if this thing is kind of like calculated, that's probably going to help you in a long way. I don't know. So does Trump go to heaven? I don't know. I think it's amazing that he asked the question. I love that. All right, back home here. We'll get to Columbus Day here in just a quick second. But here's another thing that's changed. This is fascinating. This is why I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is why the name calling and the framing and the persuasion stuff that the great Scott Adams, if you ever watch Coffee with Scott Adams, this is what he talks about all the time. Trump is the master persuader. And I don't think it was Mike Johnson. I think it was President Trump himself who started calling the government shutdown, the partial government shutdown, which we're going through right now still, even though most of government's closed today because of the holiday. It is now called by even normal people that you and I know, normal folks just working every single day. It's now known as what? The Schumer Shutdown. That's brilliant. There are very few people. There's another thing that changed. There are very few people walking around now that are not blaming the Democrats for this, because it was not to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but this was a clean continuing resolution bill. It was the Democrats because you need the 60 votes. They're the ones that wanted to muddy this up, and eventually funding in a roundabout kind of way, the healthcare funding for illegals, they're the ones shutting it down by simply calling it, and this stuck immediately, the Schumer Shutdown. Guess who's to blame? But there's Chucky Schumer, who's trying to be more relevant. There he is from the Senate. I guess apparently, I didn't even know this. Apparently he does like a little video vlog, or he might have a live stream, or just does his interviews from home as well on the weekends. I don't know. But listen to how insane this is to look at where we are. This was just on Sunday. This is Chucky Schumer from Schumer headquarters at home talking to somebody about this, and he actually wants to take it. Listen to the wording on this and where they want to take it. He wants mass hysteria to shut down the government even further so that they can vote for this thing in. This guy is a lunatic and dangerous. And if you ever wondered where the divisive language comes from, it's from several people at the top like this guy.
It is just such a hallmark of tyrannical, autocratic dictatorship societies that they use the prosecutorial department as a political weapon. It is a disgrace, and every American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, moderate, people should be forcefully rising up against this.
First of all, listen to the wording. Forcefully rising up against it. Wasn't he one of the guys 3 weeks ago, month ago, saying we need to tone down the rhetoric after the Charlie Kirk thing? Wasn't he one of them? I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Forcefully, keyword, rising up against it. And up against what is he talking about? The Letitia James prosecution, indictment, the Comey indictment. No. This came from him. This came from him and his ilk, and this is a correction to that. This isn't political revenge. The weaponization of the Department of Justice came from them. It's been happening since the Obama administration. That's what they did. They turned the FBI and the Department of Justice against their political rivals. This is just rightfully going after the crooks is what this is. But no, there's Chucky Schumer, in whatever relevance he still has left, saying Americans need to rise up against this. That's a lunatic. But the good news is, like with calling it the Schumer Shutdown, less and less people are listening to him. And again, I go back to this main point today because it's kind of a different kind of day. Compare that just jerk in his home office doing that interview, live stream, pod, whatever it was, saying that. Juxtapose that against President Trump negotiating peace in the Middle East. What looks irrelevant to you? Because it's, to me, it's Schumer. Just ridiculous. And there's less and less relevance put to that every single day that this goes on. And they're going to lose this, by the way. And yes, it is a shutdown. It's affecting a lot of people's lives. It's affecting mine as well. Some business things held up. Absolutely. But they're going to lose this, and that's going to backfire badly. That's why the name calling and putting a tag on something like this works. The Schumer Shutdown. I bet you'll find somebody today. You'll find somebody in your everyday life that will call it that if they're into this kind of thing and they know what's going on. That's why this works. All right, but let's get to it. We've got a holiday today. If you're not going to work, good for you. Columbus Day is happening. What is open? What is closed? It is a federal holiday since 1971. Well, here's what's going on. U.S. Postal Service closed. Most banks are closed. Federal government offices, non-essential offices. It's a little bit different now with the shutdown anyway. State and local government offices are closed. Bond markets are closed for the holiday, but the stock exchange works as normal for the most part. So that's what's happening. But the difference in Columbus Day this year as compared to last year or the year before or the year before that or when they started calling it Indigenous Peoples Day is exactly what happened on Friday. Let's go back a little. Actually, this was Thursday. I played it for you on Friday. Let's go back a little bit. Why is it different? Why are we calling it Columbus this time?
In other words, we're calling it Columbus Day. Okay.
Yes.
That was the press that broke out in applause. Can you believe that? I've never seen that happen before. The press actually broke out in applause. Good. Columbus Day. We're back. Columbus Day, we're back, Italians. Okay. We love the Italians. Okay.
Honest to God, as many clips as we play, that's one of my all-time favorites because of how we wrapped it up. We're back, Italians. That should have been printed up within 2 hours after he said that last week in Little Italy in New York. We're back, Italians. We love our Italians. And we should, because that was such a disrespectful thing to do, to all of a sudden assume that Columbus Day, for whatever political reasons, you're trying to change world history. You're trying to erase Christopher Columbus's contributions to the world and exploration at the time. To do that was such an amazing, disrespectful, tactical move against Italian Americans, and Italians specifically. And let me tell you why. Because if you are from an area or you're Italian American yourself, you know exactly how important Columbus Day is to those folks. Me growing up, it was always a massively important holiday. Why take that away and why disparage those great folks who have meant and still mean so much to our country's history? To make it a gentler world and to say that Christopher Columbus should be erased from history. No, he should not. You should teach kids to put it in perspective, and that was the world at the time, if you're upset about anything that happened in 1492 when he sailed the ocean blue. Absolutely ridiculous. Let me tell you what else. This was amazing. Let's go to Italians directly. This lady is something else. The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, she is something else. She wrote something amazing over the weekend honoring Christopher Columbus. It's very long. I would never read it to you, but I will just tell you this. Part of that change we're talking about, where things are going back to quote-unquote normal, comes from things like this, where she said, today we celebrate the National Day of Christopher Columbus, established in 2004. That's what they did in Italy, to honor one of the greatest Italians of whom Italy can be proud. And then she goes into the voyage. His journey laid the foundations of that indissoluble bond that unites the two shores of the Atlantic, Europe, and America. That's an incredible writing. By the way, she went on to say, today, Columbus is remembered in many nations around the world, starting with the United States. The great Genovese navigator is the bonds that unite the Italian people with the American people. Interesting that she made that connection there. Defending and celebrating Christopher Columbus means defending and celebrating our deep identity and what makes us in the world so loved, appreciated, and respected. One of the greatest statements I have ever seen Sure, it's just about Columbus Day, but one of the greatest I've ever seen from any leader anywhere, Giorgia Meloni from Italy. Fantastic. Appreciate and love your history. Was it always nice? No. But what the lunatics that want to change history and erase world figures and people that made tremendous impacts in history always want to do is forget and put it in perspective that the world was different at that time. And to take him away from world history and to stop teaching kids about Christopher Columbus is an incredibly disrespectful move to Italian Americans and Italians all over the world. Don't stand for it, ever. It's Columbus Day again. Say it loud, say it proud, and enjoy it. And I hope you get the day off anyway, hopefully, anyway. And get some great Italian food while you're at it. Thanks for finding me. Remember, this peace deal, just watch as much as you can of it. Take it in. It is an historic day. Watch it. And now, when you watch it, just keep this one thing in mind. Compare that to the nonsense we've been subjected to over the past 10 years. The petty, lawfare nonsense. Yeah, including this stupid shutdown. Compare that to a world event that actually does matter. It makes you rethink things quite a bit. And enjoy your Columbus Day. And thanks for hanging out with me. It's only Monday. Already a busy week. The live stream lives on as a repost here on X and YouTube and on Facebook, and I put clips on all of those channels as well. But your audio-only subscribers, I appreciate you so much. On Spotify, you have to press follow. Everything else is just subscribe. So thanks for doing that more and more. I appreciate you. And Facebook followers, press follow, don't just watch. I see you watching, a lot of you. Press follow as well, would you? Thank you. Have a great Columbus Day. And remember, enjoy this peace deal for what it is. We should all be rooting for peace. Have a wicked awesome Monday, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.